What would you do if your neighbor blocked your only gate every single day with a shiny luxury car and then laughed in your face when you begged them to move it? Sounds petty, right? But this wasn't just about parking. This was about control, power, and how far someone would go to remind you they think they're above you. For weeks, I tried everything, talking, warnings, even calling the police, but nothing worked. She wanted me trapped, humiliated, and powerless. What she didn't know is that I had a past she couldn't imagine, and a way to turn her little power game into the biggest mistake of her life. Because when you back someone into a corner long enough, they stop asking politely and start planning revenge. Let me start from the beginning. When I first moved out to the ranch, all I wanted was peace. Wide open skies, a stretch of land that was finally mine, and the kind of quiet you can't find in a city. No traffic, no neighbors peeking over fences, and definitely no HOA rules breathing down my neck. Or so I thought. Her name was Amara. On paper, she was the president of the local HOA. In person, she was polished, put together, and ruthless. The kind of person who smiled while cutting you down, who made every conversation feel like a performance. I'd heard whispers from neighbors, fines for things as small as leaving a trash bin out too long, warnings over paint colors that were too cheerful. But I didn't pay much attention. After all, my land sat outside the HOA's boundaries. I figured none of that nonsense could touch me. Then the Porsche showed up. It was a sleek silver one, the kind that screamed money before the engine even started. The first time I saw it parked across my gate, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a visitor got lost, maybe someone stopped to take a call. But hours passed and the car stayed put. I couldn't open the gate, couldn't drive out. Finally, I had to walk down the road, find a way around, and wait for it to move. By the time I got back, it was gone. Annoying, sure, but maybe just bad luck, except the next day it was there again. Same car, same spot. This time I waited. And then I saw her, Amara, stepping out in heels, sunglasses on, walking across the street like she owned not just her property, but mine too. She looked right at me, smirked, and kept walking. That's when it clicked. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. At first, it was just an inconvenience. But inconvenience turned into disruption fast. Delivery trucks couldn't get in, so packages piled up at the post office. A feed delivery for my horses sat stranded on the roadside because the driver couldn't back the truck through. Friends I invited out had to park nearly a mile away and hike down the dirt road just to reach my front door. Every time I thought I'd caught her gone, the Porsche would reappear like clockwork, blocking me in or locking me out. I tried reasoning with her once. Calm, respectful, just asking if she could keep the gate clear. She tilted her head, almost like she was studying a child who didn't understand the rules, then said something about community standards, and walked away. Then came the HOA meetings. I went to one just to see what she was pulling. It was worse than I imagined. Amara sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, twisting every rule to fit her narrative. One man brought up a ridiculous fine he'd gotten for planting roses that were apparently non-compliant. She dismissed him with a laugh, saying rules were rules. The neighbors around him stayed silent. No one challenged her. It wasn't that they agreed, it was that they were afraid. She had built herself into the kind of authority nobody dared cross. Meanwhile, my life kept getting smaller. Every trip out of my property became a negotiation with her blockade. The cops? They showed up once, looked at the car, and shrugged. It's a civil matter, they said. Work it out with the HOA. The HOA, of course, was Amara. The lawyer I called told me it could take months, maybe years, to get an injunction. By then, she'd have run me into the ground. The final straw came on a Saturday. My sister had promised to bring my nieces out to ride the horses. They were excited. I was excited. Simple family time I'd been looking forward to for weeks. But when they arrived, there it was again, the Porsche sitting smugly across the gate. My sister called me from the road, frustration in her voice. The girls were in the back, disappointed. They ended up turning around and going home. I stood there, fists clenched, watching from behind the gate as Amara stepped out onto her porch across the street. She raised a glass of wine, laughed, and went back inside. That laugh stayed with me. It wasn't just about a car. It was about power. She wanted me trapped, humiliated, stuck living under her thumb even though I wasn't in her HOA. Every move she made said the same thing. I control you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That night, I sat in the dark on my porch, looking at the empty road where the Porsche would no doubt sit again tomorrow. I replayed everything, every block delivery, every smirk, every laugh. I thought about the neighbors who stayed silent because they were afraid, about the cops who brushed it off, about the lawyer who told me to wait. I realized the truth. The system wasn't built to stop people like her. The rules she weaponized were the very shield she hid behind, and that's when it clicked. If I wanted this to end, I couldn't play by her rules. The law was slow, the HOA was hers, and the neighbors were too scared. I had to think differently. I had to lean on a side of myself I hadn't used in years. A side I kept buried, waiting for the moment I truly needed it. Amara thought her Porsche was untouchable. She thought her position as HOA president made her untouchable. But she didn't know me, not really. She didn't know my past or what I was capable of when someone pushed me too far. And as I sat there, the plan began to form. She thought this was just about blocking a gate. She thought it was just another neighbor she could bully. But she was wrong. She had no idea what she'd started, because if she wanted a power game, I was about to show her one she couldn't win. I'll be honest with you. When most people hit their breaking point with a toxic neighbor, they think about calling the cops again, or maybe filing another complaint. Me? My mind went somewhere different. See, before I ever settled into this quiet neighborhood, I lived a very different life. Years in the military, years around machinery most people only see in movies. Armored convoys, endless drills, even a couple of nights where the sound of steel tracks rolling over dirt meant the difference between life and death. That stuff stays with you. And standing there, staring at Amara's Porsche parked across my gate again, it hit me like lightning. What if I didn't just move her car? What if I crushed the symbol of her power the way she'd been crushing everyone else's spirit? Now I know what you're thinking. Who even has access to something like a tank? Well, when you spend enough years in uniform, you build connections that last. For me, that connection was Ethan. We served together back in the day, and while I settled into civilian life, he went on to run a military museum just a few towns over. The kind of place with rusted jeeps, sandbag displays, and yes, fully restored tanks that still ran like they were fresh off the line. Ethan and I hadn't spoken in a while, but the bond between veterans doesn't fade. I gave him a call, told him about the nightmare neighbor blocking me in with her luxury toy, and half-joked that I wished I could roll a tank over it. He laughed at first, then paused. "You know," he said, "we do private demonstrations sometimes." That was all it took. The idea became a plan, and the plan became a mission. Ethan didn't even hesitate. He offered to bring one of the museum's restored armored beasts out for a community demonstration. To the neighbors, it would look like a history event. To me, it was the perfect chance to send a message Amara would never forget. Still, it was risky. If anything went sideways, the fallout would be big. But at that point, I didn't care. She had pushed me, pushed the neighbors, pushed the entire street too far. Someone had to push back harder. The day came faster than I expected. Late afternoon, when the sun dipped just enough to cast long shadows, I heard the rumble first. Deep, metallic, bone-shaking, then the sight, an honest-to-God tank crawling down our suburban street. Neighbors poured out of their houses, phones already in their hands, some cheering, some just staring in disbelief. Kids jumped up and down like it was a parade. Even the old couple down the street who never left their porch came out to see what the noise was about. And then there was Amara. She stormed out of her house the second she realized what was happening. Her face red, her voice screeching before she even made it to the sidewalk. She shouted about rules, about permits, about how this was private property and the HOA didn't approve this nonsense. But the thing was, her voice cracked. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. Behind the arrogance was a flicker of fear. She wasn't in control, not anymore. And her little army of HOA board members? They didn't look so confident either. A couple of them stepped back, whispering to each other, already distancing themselves from her. The tank stopped right in front of my gate, its shadow swallowing Amara's precious Porsche. The crowd grew silent, all eyes fixed on the machine of steel and power. Ethan climbed down from the hatch, gave me a nod, and stepped aside. This wasn't just for me, it was for everyone who'd ever been pushed around by her. I could feel the air buzzing with tension, with anticipation. Amara tried one last time, marching forward, wagging her finger, threatening lawsuits and police. But it was too late. The tank's engine roared, the treads creaked forward, and in that slow, unstoppable crawl, it made its point clearer than words ever could. The Porsche didn't stand a chance. Steel met paint, glass shattered, metal screamed. Piece by piece, her prized possession folded under the weight, crushed flat against the pavement while the neighbors gasped, shouted and recorded every second of it. The moment it was done, there was no more laughter in Amara's voice, just silence. She stood frozen, staring at the flattened wreck that used to be her trophy car. Around her, the very neighbors she had bullied and fined for years were cheering, some clapping, some just grinning ear to ear. The power she had held over them evaporated in an instant. Not because of the car, not even because of the tank, but because everyone finally saw she could be beaten. When the engine went quiet and the dust settled, I felt a strange calm wash over me. This wasn't just revenge. It was a message. That arrogance, that abuse of power, it all had limits. And sometimes those limits are made of steel. Of course, I knew this wasn't the end. Crushed cars meant lawsuits, insurance battles, endless HOA drama still to come. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that for the first time, Amara wasn't laughing. She wasn't sneering. She wasn't in control. And the neighbors who once whispered their complaints in secret were now standing tall, united, and unafraid. Because in the end, this was never about a car blocking a gate. It was about control, about dominance, about one person's obsession with power. And the only way to end that kind of tyranny is to show everyone that the tyrant can fall. As I stood there, watching the wreckage glint in the setting sun, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes you fight fire with fire, and sometimes when the fire's too big, well, you fight it with steel.